LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the February 21st edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I'll be showing you the 13 best, most newsworthy clips I picked out from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for which it'd be a really informative, educational, fair use media criticism and political commentary show for you all tonight. I put a link down in the video description to the clip list that I'm using to remind myself what is in each of the 13 clips. They're split into three topics. The Texas crisis, the COVID crisis, and then the split in the Republican Party. I'll be covering all three of those, and actually if you look at my clip list, this is something new, or it's not new, something old that I used to do before the Trump years. I actually have the clips took a picture of my clip list. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see some of them are on the topic VIR, the virus. Some are on the topic TX, which is Texas, and then some are on the topic GOP, which is Republican Party split. Those are the little codes I use, and for a lot of the Trump years, it's just like the topic every week was Trump, 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 Trump. TRMP was almost all the clips. So it's nice to get back to actual issues, at least the Republican Party split. I will be talking about Trump, and actually next Sunday, as part of that Republican Party split, Trump is speaking at the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC. And that speech is going to take place before my broadcast, most likely. I might even have some clips from it. So we're not done discussing Trump. But anyway, those are the three topics and how you can follow along. The source of all the video clips I'm using is also down at links in the video description, including last night's Saturday Night Live, which I'm using for the Texas topic. And my political comedy clip to start off the show. In the cold open, they had Chloe Fineman playing Britney Spears in this imaginary, I don't know if you call it a game show or talk show, that was called Oops, You Did It Again. Sorry, I had to look at my notes. Oops, You Did It Again, which was for celebrities to apologize, and Ted Cruz, of course, had his big faux pas this week going on vacation in Cancun when Texas was freezing and out of water and out of power for a lot of people. And he immediately came back and he blamed his family, he blamed his daughters, and that got satirized in the cold open of Saturday Night Live that I've taken a short clip from. The entire cold opens, it'll link down in the video description, but I'll talk about this clip a little more with you after we watch it together over here.
Welcome, Texas Senator Ted Cruz.
Hola, everyone. Hey, Brittany.
Hey there, Ted. You look tan.
Oh, no, I'm not tan. I just cried myself red over my fellow Texans. And that's why I drink in their honor.
So, Ted, Texas is going through a huge crisis right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's real bad.
And you literally abandoned it and flew to Cancun for a family vacation.
That's right. And now I'm in a little bit of hot water, which I'm told is a thing no one in Texas has.
Well, would you like to apologize?
Absolutely. I deeply regret my actions over the last couple days, mostly flying United. I'm sorry. I'm pretty bad at human stuff.
So you understand why people are calling you a coward?
Yeah, coward is actually the nicest word I heard. But let me ask you this. Would a coward have the cojones to blame his actions on his young daughters?
You blamed your daughters?
Oh, yeah, the whole trip was the girls' idea. They love love Cancun. There's so much for kids to do. The topless beach, shots at senior frogs swimming with sick dolphins. They love it.
Okay, well, as someone who is often blamed for other people's problems at a young age, maybe leave your daughters out of it because it could really mess up with their heads.
So, I don't know. Actually, Aidy Bryant's Ted Cruz impression isn't that great. And it doesn't really skewer him satirically that well. I mean, the one line that I thought was good in there is, I'm bad at human stuff, but other than that, I'm not sure it's as well written as it could be. And certainly Ted Cruz is a target-rich environment that I don't think that they really capitalized on, and you can watch, like I said, the entire clip at a link down in the video description. For the live viewers, I saw that I'm having some stream problems here. I may have to upload the recorded version of this live stream as a premiere video later. I apologize for that. I don't know exactly why that's happening, but I'm going to get on with the news summaries, which I have put in order from longest to shortest, and for once the best and longest one isn't NBC News's Meet the Press. It's NBC News. They had a very short intro from Chuck Todd this week. That you'll see that at the very end. They did some news summaries later, but the longest news summary, if you include the reporter talking about Texas, Marcus Moore, came from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos. They covered Ted Cruz. They even mentioned the Andrew Cuomo scandal that they've been talking about over and over again on Fox News, which didn't even really get covered on Fox News, but I'll compare and contrast those two news summaries after I play the ABC News This Week with George Stephanopoulos news summary for you, with Jonathan Karl as the guest host this week over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. Joe Biden has now been president for a month, but this week seemed to be a new start for the Biden presidency. His predecessor's impeachment trial over, the biggest distraction is over too, at least for now. The stage is Biden's, and so are the challenges. As the nation approaches the once unthinkable milestone of 500,000 confirmed American deaths from COVID-19, there are signs of hope. Infections are down dramatically, and there are signs of just how difficult the road ahead will be. Dangerous new variants of the virus and mixed messages from the White House about when vaccines will be available for all, when schools can be fully reopened, and when life will get back to normal. We'll talk about all of that with White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki in just a few moments. This week, we also had our first post-Trump political scandals. Ted Cruz's misguided trip to Cancun and the allegations of cover-up and deadly mismanagement facing Andrew Cuomo. We'll explore all of that with the roundtable. But we begin this morning with the latest on those deadly storms that crippled Texas and brought frigid temperatures to much of the nation. Dozens have died, millions were left without power and drinking water, and vaccine shipments have been delayed from coast to coast. ABC's Marcus Moore is on the ground in Dallas. And Marcus, the frigid weather may be over, but the cleanup across the region is really just beginning.
John, absolutely. This is a catastrophe that is still unfolding. People's homes flooding after thawing pipes burst over the weekend. The president just signing a major disaster declaration for parts of this state. And really the enormity of this situation is still being realized. But we know as of this morning that at least 70 people have died nationwide as a result of this winter storm. And 10 people here in the Houston area alone have died from hypothermia. And relatives say that includes an 11-year-old boy who sadly passed away on Tuesday in his home after they lost power. And beyond that, more than 14 million people here are being told to boil their water because it's not safe to drink. And there are a lot of people at the same time who have no water at all. And basic necessities are also scarce at many of the local stores across the state. But we have seen those empty shelves and also long lines at the grocery stores here. And of course, this crisis started with massive and widespread power outages. ERCOT, the agency that manages 90% of the state's power grid. They have been under fire. People are frustrated here because they want to know why the power grid was left so vulnerable and why more wasn't done to ensure that the grid was winterized to sustain an extreme storm like this one. In the meantime, federal and state aid has been arriving in the way of food, water, and generators delivered by military jets. And the president has said that he plans to visit the Houston area midweek. But John, as you said earlier, there is a real sense that this is far from over for so many people across this region.
Thank you, Marcus. We are joined now by White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, her first Sunday show interview.
And I don't have a Jen Psaki clip, although I will have a, if you're following along on the clip list, my ABC clip later will be Steve Scalise, the final clip. I have two dueling Republican clips at the end. First, Asa Hutchinson, the governor of Arkansas, as like the post-Trump Republican, and then Steve Scalise showing how the still Trump Republicans are not really going to stand for the post-Trump Republicans, but that will be the last clip. I want to contrast that news summary with the Fox News Sunday news summary, which was actually fairly fair and balanced. It's actually very similar to what you just saw. It's almost like Fox News was trying to be a regular network this week, and especially when I showed the Bill Gates clip coming up, where they actually talk about climate change in a credulous way. They believe in climate change. Chris Wallace asked some questions with the assumption that climate change is real and asked Bill Gates to explain it to Fox News viewers. That's worth waiting for. That's clip number 7, the first clip after the news summaries. But this second news summary, like I said, Chris Wallace and Casey Stegall do a pretty good impression of Jonathan Karl and Marcus Moore from that last clip. And they're about the same length. They're pretty much on the same topic. You can let me know what you think the differences are after we watch the second one, the Fox News one after the ABC one over here.
And hello again from Fox News in Washington. A deadly winter storm that first knocked out power has now created a water emergency for 13 million Texans, half that state's population. President Biden has approved a major disaster declaration and is considering a trip to the state to see the damage and the response. Meanwhile, the breakdown in the electrical grid has sparked a debate over the state's energy policy. In a moment, we'll talk with Bill Gates about what happened in Texas and his ideas for dramatically reshaping how we produce and consume energy. But first, Casey Stegall has the latest on the fallout from this week's deep freeze in the Lone Star State.
This one was full of ice.
A struggle to survive in Texas this week.
Without water and without like electricity and all that, it's just bad.
For millions, the power outages lasted for days. Days of no heat left people shivering in their homes. Then bad problems got worse.
We actually noticed the water pipe broke more down that way, near the gym.
So many pipes froze and burst, infrastructure became compromised, leading to unsafe drinking water for millions, with communities issuing boil water advisories.
I've been to several different stores and no one has water.
Lines quickly began forming outside stores that were open, but basic supplies were hard to find.
Thank you!
Which sent thousands to food banks and water distribution centers.
We would have ordered evacuations. We would have warned the vulnerable people that they needed to make other plans.
Many are angry and demanding answers from ERCOT, the private agency responsible for running the Texas power grid, which is independent from the rest of the country and not subject to federal regulation.
I'm taking responsibility for the current status of ERCOT. Again, I find what has happened unacceptable.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott has ordered an emergency investigation into what went wrong and how to prevent it from happening again.
All of Texas's 254 counties have been impacted. The storm is already expected to be more costly than Hurricane Harvey's $19 billion worth of insurance claims. Chris?
Casey Stegall reporting from Dallas. Casey, thanks for that.
And you see kind of a similar report if you want to compare all three, the ABC, the Fox News, and here's CBS News' Face the Nation, about the same length focusing on Texas. The thing I find amusing is, remember Mark Strassman was always in Atlanta waiting to get a COVID interview with someone from the CDC. And there was one time when Margaret Brennan explained he was like waiting there for months. Well, he's back in Atlanta for no apparent reason, reporting on Texas. At least Casey Stegall from Fox News Sunday was in Dallas. But here's Margaret Brennan with like 10 seconds of dialogue, passing it on to Mark Strassman. Also focusing on Texas, but then sort of bringing it back to COVID at the end in the news summary I will talk about with you after we watch together over here.
Good morning and welcome to Face the Nation. We've got a lot to get to today, and we begin with the dire situation in Texas. Here's Mark Strassman.
The heat's back, but Texas swagger has burst like these pipes in Metro Dallas.
So that's what I've been dealing with all day long.
In much of Austin, running water is a crisis. Houston has a boil water advisory through tomorrow. This past week's Arctic storm was generational. Texas exceptionalism, the state's self-image, froze with everything else. Nationally, last week's storms could total $50 billion in damages. In Texas, it's predicted as the most costly disaster in state history.
This past week has been an enormous challenge.
At its peak, 4 million people lost power.
In the morning when you wake up, it's high 30s, low 40s inside the house.
Victims died of hypothermia in bedrooms and backyards. Texans shivered and boiled all at once.
I just got power on after 36 hours. I'm over it. We need some help.
Blistered by critics, ERCOT, the state's main grid operator. Utilities also failed to winterize gas-fueled plants and pipes. Governor Greg Abbott, he blamed green energy in a state beholden to fossil fuels. And especially Senator Ted Cruz. He left with his family for tropical Mexico and was whacked like a piñata. He raced home for redemption, handing out water to Texans who could only dream of Cancun. Last night, Senator Cruz's office told Face the Nation before the storms hit, Senator Cruz spoke with a meteorologist about the seriousness of the projected storms. Senator Cruz connected the meteorologist to Governor Abbott and warned Texans early on to take the storms seriously. Beyond Texas, last week's snowstorms also threw a 3-day delay into the COVID vaccine rollout from coast to coast. Wintry weather shut down the FedEx hub in Memphis and the UPS one in Louisville. FEMA reported more than 2,000 vaccine sites lost power. 6 million doses have been delayed. At vaccination centers like Atlanta's Mercedes-Benz Stadium, ripples from those delays could continue into this week. It's another wrinkle to the rollout in a nationwide race against the clock. Margaret?
Mark Strassman in Atlanta, thank you. We'll have more on the situation in Texas in a moment, but we want to turn to White House National Security Advisor
Jake Sullivan, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. I have dueling clips with him and Matt Pottinger from the Trump administration, both talking about how much China is to blame for the whole COVID-19 crisis and what happened, the origins of COVID-19 in Wuhan, whether it was human error or naturally occurring seems to be where they're splitting. And I'll get to that. That'll be clips number 10 and 11 when I get there. But you notice that Mark Strassman, for no apparent reason, was reporting from Atlanta. At least he brought it back to COVID at the end. So he did mention COVID. I thought Fox News Sunday did not mention the 500,000 COVID deaths in their news summary, which you did see from ABC, and you'll also see from CNN State of the Union and NBC News' Meet the Press in these next two news summaries, which are shorter. But today was the day that the United States actually topped 500,000 COVID-19 deaths, which, as you'll see, Dana Bash say in this brief news summary, that's twice as much as like the next closest nation in the world, which is pretty bad. And Dana Bash also talks about the state of our union is short supply, which is power, water, Texas, And I'll talk about that news summary a little more after we watch together over here.
Hello, I'm Dana Bash in Washington, where the state of our union is short on supply. This morning, millions of Texans are still without safe water and struggling with the aftermath of a deep freeze that killed dozens and left the state crippled when its power grid failed. To add insult to injury, some Texans are waking up to thousands of dollars in energy bills after unprecedented price surges, which Texas authorities say they are investigating. That winter storm that is sweeping across the country is also impacting the vaccine effort that was already playing a game of catch-up. The White House says 6 million doses were delayed because of the weather. This as the U.S. approaches a somber new pandemic milestone, 500,000 COVID deaths by the official numbers. That is more than double the next country on that list. There is some good news, however. The map of new infections starting to turn green again. You see it there, and COVID cases are down by 70%. But experts are warning the country is in a race against time as new variants of the virus threaten to supercharge the spread, causing some to question whether the U.S. should begin prioritizing first vaccine doses over second to get more shots in arms. Well, joining me now is the nation's top infectious disease expert and President Biden's chief medical advisor on COVID-19, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Dr. Fauci, thank you so much.
And I have an Anthony Fauci clip coming up. I even have his name in the title. I thought that was a good news summary. Maybe the best of the news summaries from CNN State of the Union. They kind of covered everything. The Republican Party split, I guess, not so much, but that's covered in the shortest of the news summaries. Could it be shortest and best? I don't know. There's no pre-recorded package this week. Chuck Todd has no package. Well, it's actually later in the program. I didn't take those clips. They did have some pre-recorded news packages about the Republican Party split, and they did have a report from Texas, but just later in the program, kind of like the ones you saw earlier from ABC and Fox News. But anyway, Chuck Todd actually breaks down the same three topics I have, the COVID-19 crisis, the Texas crisis, and the Republican Party split, in the briefest of the news summaries that I'll talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
Well, a good Sunday morning. We are covering three big stories today. The deep freeze and power failure in Texas, where millions are still in a boil water situation, and the fallout over how the state's hands-off governance failed to prevent what appears to have been a preventable catastrophe. Then there's the civil war inside the GOP between the Trump and establishment wings. The most prominent example, the growing feud between former President Trump and the Republican Senate leader, Mitch McConnell. But we're going to begin with the COVID-19 pandemic. Sometime, likely today, the U.S. death toll will hit 500,000. It's a number that far exceeds many early estimates and reminds us of just how heavy a toll this virus has taken on this nation. The brutal winter weather across the country this week has delayed the delivery of some 6 million vaccine doses. But the good news is this: confirmed cases are continuing to fall. And it is that which is increasing pressure actually on governments to now reopen schools and get kids back into the classroom. So all those issues on the table. Joining me now is Dr. Anthony Fauci, is of course the director of the National Institute for Allergy.
Anthony Fauci was actually on 3 different programs. I don't have the Meet the Press clip. I have actually regarding when things are going to get back to normal. That I have him answering that clip, that question in a clip coming up with CNN State of the Union, Dana Bash. But before I get to that, I want to show this clip I promised earlier where Chris Wallace from Fox News Sunday does something you don't see a lot on Fox News, where and actually I didn't see climate change mentioned in any of the other corporate news, the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big 5 corporate outlets this morning. Only Fox News mentioned climate change and how it was related to what happened in Texas. They first, and this is Bill Gates on as a guest on Fox News Sunday, and Chris Wallace got him to debunk the green energy myth. And it's kind of funny because he shows Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, blaming green energy for the power loss in Texas on Fox News, on the Hannity program. And Chris Wallace does a good job of debunking the Hannity opinion show on his own network using Bill Gates. and then also uses Bill Gates to tell Fox News viewers why they should believe that climate change is real in this important clip for Fox News viewers especially. I have to give kudos to Chris Wallace for doing this, and I will talk about that clip a little more with you after we watch it together over here.
The deep freeze in Texas and the breakdown in the state's power grid have renewed questions about climate change and how we produce the energy we need. I sat down earlier with Bill Gates, who's out with a new book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. And we began with the troubles in Texas these last few days. Bill, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Great to talk to you.
Millions of people were affected by the power outages in Texas this week, and the governor, Greg Abbott, blamed it on alternative energy sources. Here he is.
This shows how the Green New Deal would be a deadly deal for the United States of America. If the Biden administration is going to try to eradicate fossil fuels in the United States, every state is going to constantly have challenges like what America has seen take place in Texas right now.
The governor says that wind turbines especially failed and created this crisis. Your response?
Well, it's not at all true. The failure to weatherize some of the nuclear sensors, the natural gas plants, and even some of the wind are responsible for their power shortage, and the wind is a tiny part of it. It was mostly the thermal generators that went offline because they haven't been weatherized. Obviously, wind works in North Dakota, it works in Alaska. We know how to weatherize wind turbines. The wind does come and go, but what was shut down, the vast majority, is thermal plants here. So, you know, there is a reliability issue that we'll have to design the system, including more transmission. You know, Texas over time will want to connect up so that when it does get shortages, it's able to draw on other parts of the country.
As you know, a lot of people here at Fox News that watch us question whether climate change is real and how much of it is man-made. And they also question that whether it's heat or freezing cold, whether it's floods or drought, that it's all climate change. So make your best case to the folks who this past week have been freezing in Texas.
Well, the change in the wind patterns is allowing those cold fronts to come down from Canada more often. There's a pattern of wind that as it gets warmer, that breaks down. There's no doubt that we're putting CO2 into the atmosphere. There's no doubt that that increases temperatures and that affects the weather. And so the ill effects, whether it's, farming in Texas being changed or wildfires or coral reefs dying off, there's, super hard evidence of the ocean rising. I do think it's fair that people have different views on the tactics to deal with climate change. In fact, having both parties thinking about that is going to be very important as we go forward. But this is a real challenge, and it's great to see that particularly young Republicans are joining in and saying that this is something they care about beyond their own individual success, morally preserving these ecosystems, allowing a livable planet. They care about that.
So, like I said, amazing to see climate change on Fox News, which isn't even really a news network, where kudos to Chris Wallace, especially if you're someone who watches as much Fox News as I do. You've seen them, they actually promoted this story a lot of the week about green energy being responsible for the Texas power outage, which it's ridiculous, as Bill Gates explained in that last clip. And they even had, you saw Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, go on Fox News itself, and Rick Perry, the former governor of Texas and former Secretary of Energy, who famously couldn't even remember the Department of Energy in his debates. Like, he was trying to remember 3 things and couldn't remember the third one, and he actually became the secretary of that department. That's one of those weird things that happen that makes you think we're all living in a simulation because it's just too ridiculous. But there you saw Fox News Sunday engage in some semblance of journalism and do its like small part in 1 hour to refute a bunch of the lies that have been spread on Fox News for the rest of the week. Does that, if they like do that one, you know, one of the things you notice is there are a lot of Catholics who work at Fox News, so maybe they think if they like show a little bit of contrition on Sunday, then their sins are expiated for the rest of the week. I don't know, but anyway, Chris Wallace did a good job giving a little bit of factual information to Fox News viewers there, as I've kind of beaten the dead horse there enough. And the next clip is the Anthony Fauci clip I promised. Like I said, he was on 3 of the network shows, and this was the one where if you listen to this carefully, the answer to the question, when are things going back to normal in the United States, is nobody really knows. Could be the end of the year, could be next year, could be years, could be 2022. It all depends on things that we can't predict if you listen carefully to what Anthony Fauci says. And the one thing I like about this clip, I took a screenshot of Anthony Fauci and I put it in my thumbnail because he like seems really happy. And maybe because it looks like COVID has peaked in January and we're in this precipitous downturn in COVID cases. Maybe because he doesn't have to stand on a stage with Donald Trump anymore, but he's like ebullient. You'll see he kind of laughs at he has like this, he cracks up at the beginning of this clip, and that's where I took half of my thumbnail from. And I'll talk about that clip a little more, even though it's not such great news given that all the unknowns as to when things are getting back to normal, which I will talk about with you a little more after we watch that clip together over here.
You and the president have suggested that we'll approach normality toward the end of the year. What does normal mean? Do you think Americans will still be wearing masks, for example, in 2022?
You know, I think it is possible that that's the case. And again, it really depends on what you mean by normality. If
right,
normality
that's what I want you to
is
define
exactly the way it... Yeah. No, Dana, it's important because if normality means exactly the way things were before we had this happen to us, I mean, I can't predict that. I mean, obviously, I think we're going to have a significant degree of normality beyond what the terrible burden that all of us have been through over the last year. That as we get into the fall and the winter, by the end of the year, I agree with the president completely that we will be approaching a degree of normality. It may or may not be precisely the way it was in November of 2019, but it'll be much, much better than what we're doing right now.
Why do you think Americans might have to wear masks into 2022?
You know, because it depends on the level of dynamics of virus that's in the community, and that's really important. Because that gets back to something, again, that you said. If you see the level coming down really, really very low, I want it to keep going down to a baseline that's so low that there's virtually no threat, or not no, it'll never be zero, but a minimal threat that you will be exposed to someone who is infected. So if you combine getting most of the people in the country vaccinated with getting the level of virus in the community very, very low, then I believe you're going to be able to say, you know, for the most part, we don't necessarily have to wear masks. But if we have a level of virus that is at that level that it was months and months ago, like 20,000 per day is a heck of a lot better than what it's been. But that's still very high level of virus in the community. I want to see it go way down. When it goes way down and the overwhelming majority of the people in the population are vaccinated, then I would feel comfortable in saying, you know, we need to pull back on the masks. We don't need to have masks.
Wow. So your timeline is taking us out a year, maybe 2 years, maybe even longer.
No, I can't say that, Dana, and I don't want it to be said that because then it'll be a soundbite that's not true.
Okay, good.
I'm saying we don't know. We don't know. And you know, the president said it very, very well. At the very end of his press conference, when he was in Michigan at the Pfizer plant, he said, you know, you ask me to make projections. These are just projections that are estimates. And a lot of things can happen to modify that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why we've got to be careful, because you have variants that you need to deal with. There are so many other things that would make a projection that I give you today on this Sunday wind up not being the case 6 months from now.
Understood. I have to, before I let you go, ask about the grim milestone that the U.S. looks like it's.
And you see there, they talk about the grim milestone that the United States passed today, 500,000 dead Americans from COVID-19. And if you listen carefully, like I said before I showed the clip, to what Anthony Fauci said there, there are too many variables to really know when things are going back to normal. There could be vaccine hesitancy, so like a large portion of the population doesn't get vaccinated, and that will continue spread. Even though COVID looks like it's finally peaked and it's going to go down to some lower level than it was in mid-January when we were, there was the Thanksgiving super spreader events and the Christmas super spreader events and the New Year's, and it went up and up and up, and that hopefully was the peak, but maybe people won't get vaccinated, maybe people will start relaxing and not doing the mitigation steps, the hand washing, the mask wearing, the social distancing as much. And then there are the mutations. There's the UK variant coming in that spreads more easily and may be deadlier. And then there's the South African variant I was talking about last week, that mutation that may not, the vaccines might not be as effective against, and who knows what other mutations might be out there, especially here in the United States. We have all of our own variants and very little genetic tracking of the different variants. So I guess, like I said before I showed the clip, if you pay attention really carefully to what Anthony Fauci said as to when things are going to get back to normal, there are just too many unknowns to really predict. It might be at the end of the year, it might be next year, 2022, might be masking till 2022, and that's something I don't really look forward to, and hopefully that is one of the, like the worst case scenarios or whatever. But anyway, speaking of getting back to normal, one of the things that's really making that difficult is schools that have not reopened. And, I was talking about Fox News earlier. That is one of the, I don't know if you want to call it a boogeyman or punching bag, but one of the people that they continually attack, or one of the organizations they continually attack on Fox News, are the teachers' unions on the right. And there are some other right-wing figures like Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy, is like big on Twitter. In a right-wing thought leader, I guess, the guy who does the Dilbert comics, and he is a huge hater of teachers unions, saying that they're like the most racist organization in America, and they have like the most responsibility for COVID deaths. I don't even know what the reasoning is behind that, but anyway, to sort of give a reasonable picture of what teachers actually want, I decided to take this clip of Randi Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers, the largest teachers union, talking to Chuck Todd about what it is teachers really want. There are basically 3 steps. They're looking for mitigation. That's, social distancing, hand washing, mask wearing in the schools. They're looking for testing so they can see where the outbreaks are, even if they're asymptomatic. And they're looking for vaccination priority. Not that all teachers have to be vaccinated before they open the schools, which is what you're hearing them say on Fox News all the time, but just that teachers should be prioritized. And there's a follow-up question from Chuck Todd about where the model school districts are, and you'll see Randi Weingarten talking about New York and Washington, D.C., and the governors who have prioritized teachers. And I think it's about half the states, like 27 states, I think I might have heard, have teachers prioritized to get vaccinated. and it's mostly blue states. I don't know why that is, but anyway, I will talk about all of that a little more after we watch that 4-minute explanation from the president of the American Federation of Teachers together over here.
I want to start with where I think many folks are framing this argument, and you may think it's unfair, but I want to put this up. This is from The Nation. The coronavirus will be with us in one form or another forever. Zero tolerance made sense in the first year of the pandemic, just as it made some sense in the early 90s to fight crime. But zero tolerance cannot be a viable long-term strategy when it comes to reopening schools and other vital public institutions. And then also, let me let you listen to Governor Gavin Newsom, because he kind of is making the same point, and then I want to get you to respond. Here's what he said.
You find whatever you look for. So if we want to find reasons not to open, we'll find plenty of reasons. If we want to start building on ways to strategize, to find ways of getting to where we all want to go, we'll figure that out as well.
I think in both instances, the question is this, Randi, what is reasonable risk? How do you define it?
Right. And so, look, I thank you for letting me be on today, Chuck, because I do actually want to debunk this myth that teacher unions, at least our union, doesn't want to reopen schools. Teachers know that in-person education is really important, and it's, we would have said that pre-pandemic. We knew that remote education, is not a good substitute. There's a roadmap now, and so you actually can follow that roadmap in terms of defining those risks. And I think between the CDC guidance as well as the resources that President Biden is trying to get in the $1.9 trillion package, we have the highway or the roadmap that allows us to do this. And it comes down to three things: the mitigation, the layered mitigation strategies, the testing so that you can actually see asymptomatic spread, and vaccine prioritization. Not that every single teacher has to be vaccinated before you open any schools, but you should align the vaccine prioritization with the reopening of schools.
Is there a model school district right now that you feel as if you could say, hey, see, this is the way that this can be done, and it'll keep, and everybody will be reasonably happy?
Yes, there's no perfect solution, but frankly, I think that New York City has done a pretty good job in terms of showing the way. Big school district, lots of issues in terms of old buildings, and we learned a lot from what New York City did in September and October. And in fact, my members, I just did a survey of my membership, and 85% have said that they would be comfortable being in school if they had the kind of testing, layered mitigation, like, and vaccine prioritization. And that's what New York City is doing. So I want to actually lift up people like Washington, D.C. The mayor actually made sure that every teacher and school employee that wanted the vaccine got vaccinated in the last few weeks. Same in terms of the Oregon governor, same in terms of the West Virginia governor, same in terms of the Ohio governor. And so when I hear politicians, when I hear Governor Newsom saying you're always going to find a way out, well, why is he not actually prioritizing the teachers in LA where they've been in purple zone, not in red zone? So where I think the issue is, if the NFL could figure out how to do this in terms of testing and the protocols, if schools are that important, let's do it. And my members want it. They just want to be safe.
All right, you have outlined, you have said, you're not saying.
So there you go, the teachers union perspective. I'm glad to see NBC News Meet the Press had that interview and let Randi Weingarten on to dispel the myths about teachers being against school reopening. And a lot of the stuff I've seen on Fox News during the week, I pretty much talked about that extensively before I showed the clip. I have two more COVID-19 clips. This is on the origins, or as Trump would say, the oranges of the coronavirus, what happened in Wuhan, I guess. And it starts with Matt Pottinger from the Trump administration, then followed by Jake Sullivan, the current national security advisor for the Biden administration. I did want to, I noticed along the way, I got 3 super chat contributions from 3 regular viewers, Tom Trask, Sinful Solutions, and Lulu Girl. I especially appreciate super chat contributions on this live stream that seems to be out of audio sync, and especially because I'm not going to let this live stream become public later, as I usually do. I'm going to upload the recorded show as a premiere video, so I'll have like a whole new live audience later. Your super chats will be lost to history, I guess. It'll be in an unlisted archive live stream or whatever, but you could save the link because it won't actually go away. It just won't be public. It'll be unlisted, which means you can see it if you have the link. But anyway, now I'm going off into some weird YouTube tangent that nobody really cares about, but I care about my regular viewers supporting my live stream with those super chat contributions. There are also other ways to support my videos financially. It links down in the video description: PayPal, Patreon. There's a join button if you want to become a YouTube member. Those all help in various ways, and I appreciate all those. I appreciate the financial support, the moral support, the people who just give the supportive comments, the thumbs up, people who subscribe to my channel, all of that. So thank you for that. I especially appreciate it on days like this when the technical difficulties mean you have to deal. Right now, my mouth is not saying what the audio is saying, is it? So thank you for that. Sticking with me, and like I said, I will upload the recorded version of this as soon as I'm done, and it probably will be live like 90 minutes after I finish the show. And anyway, now let me get to those 2 origins of the coronavirus, Wuhan theories. That first you'll hear Matt Pottinger from the Trump administration talk about this newly declassified material that he says means that it's more likely human error than a natural occurrence. Like it escaped from the lab. It wasn't intentionally released, but somehow it escaped from the Wuhan lab, according to this Matt Pottinger guy. And then Jake Sullivan, the current national security advisor, he just says we don't know enough. There's not enough transparency with what China's doing. So first I'll show the Matt Pottinger clip, quickly followed by the Jake Sullivan clip that we can talk about after we watch them together. These are both from CBS News' Face the Nation this morning over here.
U.S. intelligence has said COVID, according to wide scientific consensus, was not man-made or genetically modified. You are not in any way alleging that it was, are you?
No. If you weigh the circumstantial evidence, the ledger on the side of an explanation that says that this resulted from some kind of human error, it far outweighs the side of the scale that says this was some natural outbreak. We have very strong reason to believe that the Chinese military was doing secret classified animal experiments in that same laboratory going all the way back to at least 2017. We have good reason to believe that there was an outbreak of flu-like illness among researchers working in the Wuhan Institute of Virology in the fall of 2019, but immediately before the first documented cases came to light.
So what you're referring to is some information that the State Department declassified right before the end of the Trump administration. And It said that you have reason to believe a COVID-like disease was circulating in autumn of 2019 in China. Is there evidence to back up that assessment?
There is, and that was a very carefully crafted statement, carefully crafted so as not to overstate the case that was making. The case it was making was for following up on these important leads.
So there you see kind of it was human error in the Wuhan lab. They were the Chinese military was studying it in the lab and it somehow escaped. Not that it was, they're not saying it was created in the lab, and I don't know. That guy was the deputy national security advisor in the Trump administration. This next guy is the actual national security advisor in the Biden administration, and he just wants more investigation. You'll see talking to Margaret Brennan here about a 9/11 style commission to see what went wrong. He talks briefly about what Trump did wrong, and then he goes straight into the whole China origins question and lack of transparency, the need for further investigation, but not going quite as far as Matt Pottinger in that last clip. And I will talk about this next clip a little more with you after we watch it together. Margaret Brennan talking to Jake Sullivan over here.
We'll have more on the situation in Texas in a moment, but we want to turn to White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. He joins us in Washington this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Jake, we're about to cross this milestone of 500,000 Americans dead due to COVID. Do you think there needs to be a 9/11 style commission to figure out what went wrong?
I believe that we need to take a variety of steps to look at the previous administration's response to the pandemic and what lessons we need to learn to make sure that never happens again. I also believe that we need a credible, open, transparent international investigation led by the World Health Organization. And they're about to come out with a report about the origins of the pandemic in Wuhan, China, that we have questions about, because we do not believe that China has made available sufficient original data into how this pandemic began to spread, both in China and then eventually around the world. And we believe that both the WHO and China should step up on this matter.
President Biden spoke to Xi Jinping, China's president, for what he said was 2 hours. Did he ask China specifically to make this data available? And in what you just said, are you suggesting the WHO is being manipulated by China?
I'm not going to characterize it that way. What I am going to say is that the only way to have a scientifically based investigation is to have access to all of the data. And not merely, Margaret, to know what happened in this pandemic, but to be able to prevent future pandemics as well, because the lessons we learned this time around will apply in the future. President Biden did raise the issue of COVID-19 and the need for all countries to shoulder responsibility, to take their own responsibility for helping protect the world, including China.
The State Department said back in January that the U.S. has evidence that a COVID-like virus was circulating in Wuhan, China, as far back as autumn of 2019, and the Chinese military was conducting secret experiments at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Do you dispute any of that declassified material?
Look, this is why the WHO investigation has to be left to the scientists and the experts to lay out without any interference by any government, because that's the only way we're going to know what the origins of this are. I'm not in a position to say how COVID-19 came into this world. All I'm in a position to do is to call upon the WHO to do its job to the fullest extent possible.
But so you are standing by that declassified report?
No, I'm saying that I am not in a position, nor is the Biden administration in a position, to make a determination about precisely where COVID-19 originated, and that's in part because there has not been sufficient transparency coming from the government of China, and the WHO still has more work to do to get to the bottom of exactly where this virus emerged.
So there you have it. The current National Security Advisor will neither confirm nor deny what the Deputy National Security Advisor for the Trump administration, what he's saying, that there was some human error. The military was studying this coronavirus that was already spreading in the fall of 2019 in Wuhan, and there's this declassified material, but that's what the Trump guy's saying. But the Biden guy is saying we need more investigation, and but I don't know. Did not say it wasn't true. You can draw your own conclusions. It sounds like this report that's coming out from the World Health Organization about the origins of the coronavirus in Wuhan is not going to have enough information, that China won't have given enough information to the people doing the report for it to really have good conclusions. And anyway, I thought that was an important back and forth. That's why I wanted to juxtapose those two clips and let you watch them. That is the last clips in my COVID crisis subtopic or topic, I guess. And then the final topic I promised were two dueling Republicans in the Republican Party split topic. Basically, most of the party is pro-Trump. There's some of the party that is trying to come up with a post-Trump Republican Party, you know, going back to conservative values, whatever those are at this point. And then some are actually leaving the Republican Party. And I'm going to show this is one of the second group of Republicans who's trying to go back to conservative values post-Trump, doesn't want Trump to run again, even though they voted for Trump in the past. This is Governor Asa Hutchinson of Arkansas. But what he's discussing is a clip from his nephew, who is a state senator in Arkansas, who's decided he's got to leave the Republican Party. And a lot of Republicans are leaving to get away from Trump. And then there's the possibility Trump will form his own party, but why? He basically owns most of the Republican Party right now, so why should he form his own party? That is all discussed in these next two clips, starting with Dana Bash on CNN State of the Union asking Governor of Arkansas Asa Hutchinson about his nephew and about the future of the Republican Party over in this clip.
The debate over the direction of your party, Governor, took a personal angle for you this week. Arkansas State Senator Jim Hendren, who was your nephew, announced that he's leaving because of the GOP's embrace of Donald Trump, and he pointed specifically to the insurrection on January 6th. I want to play for our viewers what he said.
That day was the final straw. I asked myself, what in the world would I tell my grandchildren when they asked one day what happened and what did I do about it? I'm still a conservative, but I'm one whose values about decency, civility, and compassion I just don't see in my party anymore. I haven't changed. My party has.
What's your reaction to that? Your own nephew doesn't see a place for himself in your party anymore.
Well, it saddens me, and it's certainly a warning sign to us that there's many out there that would like to see a more civil dialogue. And so I have tremendous respect for his what he announced or what he's thinking there. But he's been a big part of lowering taxes in Arkansas. He's been a great partner with me. But he has said, I'm going to start as an independent. And I tell him, and I believe it in my heart, I fought for 40 years for a conservative Republican Party. And sure, we have personalities that come and go, but we stick to our principles. That's a good future. And that's where I am, right with the party, trying to build it for the future on a conservative basis, but also we're trying to accomplish the same thing in a more civil dialogue, being able to reach across the aisle, to be able to work with each other. And that's what I really think the American public wants versus driving that wedge. So it saddens me, but at the same time, I respect his decision. We're going to work for a mutual goal, but in different ways. I'll be working within the Republican Party.
Well, you told my colleague Aaron Burnett that Trump can't define the party moving forward. But the fact is, he does define it right now, to the point that people like your nephew feel they have no choice but to leave. The former president is speaking at CPAC. He's encouraging primary challenges against fellow Republicans who don't embrace him. So has Trump succeeded in taking down the Republican Party as you know it?
Well, he will only define our party if we let him define our party. And that's one of the reasons that my voice is important. Others' voice is important in this debate. And I think it's fine for CPAC to invite former President Trump to speak, but How about the other voices, Senator Cassidy from Louisiana, those that have different points of view, still arch conservatives, but a different voice for the future of our party. And so that's what we've got to embrace. He has a loud megaphone, but we have to have many different voices. And in my view, we can't let him define us for the future, because that would just further divide our country, and it would hurt our Republican Party.
The former president is teasing a run again in 2024. Would you ever support him again?
No, I wouldn't. It's time. And he's got a good family. I've worked with Ivanka and others, and they love America. But I would not support him for re-election in 2024. He's going to have a voice, but as former presidents do. But there's many voices in the party. And again, he should not define our future. We've got to define it for ourselves, and that has to be based upon the principles that really gave us the strength in America. We've got to respond to the people that like Trump. We've got to respond and identify with the issues that gave him the first election and gave him support throughout his presidency. There's the one that we have to reach out to, but it's based upon conservative principles and reaching out to those blue-collar voters that are so important, that identified with him because he was fighting for them. And we've got to take that message, but we just got to handle it in a different way with different personalities.
Governor, before I let you go, I want to ask about New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who was under fire.
And you see, they covered Andrew Cuomo there, and on ABC, like I said, they also mentioned Andrew Cuomo on Fox News Sunday, because Fox News has been hammering Andrew Cuomo all week, as like, especially after the Ted Cruz thing. Anytime they mention Ted Cruz, they say, but not as bad as Andrew Cuomo. Although one thing Ted Cruz has kind of got away with is the whole January 6th insurrection day. He was one of those Republicans who was giving support to the whole stolen election big lie that helped promote the insurrection on January 6th. Asa Hutchinson, I don't think, is in that camp. But he's definitely like 25% of the Republican Party that's left after people like his nephew have left the party, as I was talking about before I showed that clip. But to show what the majority of the Republican Party is like, this is the number 2 in leadership, Steve Scalise. He just done Kevin McCarthy from California is the minority leader. And you'll see here, Jonathan Karl on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos starts off showing him a clip of his own minority leader, the head of the Republicans in the House, Kevin McCarthy, saying that back in January, Kevin McCarthy said that Trump had responsibility for what happened January 6th, the insurrection, although McCarthy's kind of backed off on that, and he said, like, everybody's responsible, and Kevin McCarthy went down to Mar-a-Lago, as did Steve Scalise. He went down to Mar-a-Lago to, I don't know, kiss Trump's ring or whatever. I hope it was his ring. But to counteract the somewhat reasonable, fight for conservative values pitch you just heard from Governor Asa Hutchinson, here's Steve Scalise, who won't say Trump is responsible for the January 6th insurrection, won't say the election wasn't stolen from Trump, and barely, grudgingly admits that Biden is the legitimate president. That's, this is where, 3/4, 2/3, at least a majority of the Republicans, the pro-Trump, the Trump-owned Republican Party, is exemplified by, this is the final news clip. This, it's bad news for the country. In some ways, it's good news for Democrats, because this split was really increased this week with Mitch McConnell and Trump having a public spat where, McConnell, after Trump was acquitted, as I talked about last week, acquitted in his impeachment trial, but 57 senators voted to convict him, including 7 Republicans. Mitch McConnell voted to acquit him, but then came out and made a strong case that he was morally and practically responsible for what happened January 6th. And then Trump came out and called him a dour, humorless conservative, so that is the big split in the Republican Party, and Steve Scalise is pretty obviously on Trump's side, not McConnell's side, just like most of the Republican Party, as I will discuss a little more after we watch this final news clip from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, guest hosted by Jonathan Karl, asking very good questions and getting bad answers for America, maybe good for the Democratic Party, because if there's this big split and Trump runs these primary candidates, as you'll see Steve Scalise talking about, Democrats are not going to lose the House and they're not going to lose the Senate. They might even make gains, and historically presidents lose House seats in their first midterm, so this could be really good for the Democrats, but really bad for the country, as I will talk about with you a little more after we watch this clip together over here.
All right, Congressman, I want to turn to your trip down to Mar-a-Lago. You met with Donald Trump this past week. Before I ask you about this, though, I want to play you what Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader in the House, had to say in January about the president and January 6th.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility.
You heard him say the facts require immediate action from President Trump. We obviously didn't hear it then. When you met with the former president, did you ask him to take responsibility? Did he take responsibility?
Well, Jonathan, I was in Florida doing some fundraising throughout a number of parts of Florida. I ended up at Mar-a-Lago, and the president reached out, and we visited. I hadn't seen him since he had left the White House, and it was actually good to catch up with him. I noticed he was a lot more relaxed than his 4 years in the White House. He still cares a lot about this country and the direction of our country. But it was a conversation more about how he's doing now and what he's planning on doing and how his family is doing.
But wait a minute. I mean, he hasn't taken responsibility. You heard Kevin McCarthy say, do you agree with what Kevin McCarthy said there, that the president must take responsibility, that the facts demand that he take responsibility for what happened on January 6th?
Well, first of all, I wrote a Wall Street Journal editorial about where I think the responsibility lays for January 6th, and surely there's a lot of blame to go around, but at the end of the day, the people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, it was a disgrace, and they need to be held accountable. And in fact, over 180 have already been arrested, and I know the FBI is working to root out every person who broke into the Capitol, who attacked police. There's no
that's obvious. I'm asking about Donald Trump's role in this. You heard, again, Kevin McCarthy. Do you agree with what he said? That he bears responsibility for what happened,
Well, again, you can go back and look at the impeachment trial, the second impeachment trial. It seems like all they've done since the day he walked into office was try to impeach him. But again, when you look at that trial, they ran a clip of pretty much every United States senator who voted to impeach President Trump, who talked about things like go and fight like hell and other things like that.
So you're saying he doesn't bear responsibility?
When you look at President, when you look, President Trump has denounced what happened. And I think everybody should have been unequivocal in their denouncing of what happened, not only on January 6th, but during the summer when they were burning down cities, shooting cops, beating people in the streets. You saw the left denouncing January 6th, as we did. They didn't denounce what happened during the summer. So let's be across the board and saying anybody who resorts to violence to settle political disputes, there's no place for that in America, and it should be disputed unequivocally.
Let's also be clear, then President Donald Trump did not denounce what happened on January 6th. But clear this up for me. Joe Biden won the election. He is the legitimate president of the United States. The election was not stolen, correct?
Look, Joe Biden's the president. There were a few states that did not follow their state laws. That's really the dispute that you've seen continue on. And look, if you're Joe Biden, you probably want to keep talking about impeachment and anything other than the fact that he's killed millions of American energy jobs, that he continues they just signed the Paris Accord. It's going to kill manufacturing jobs in America. But at the end of the day, when you look at where we are in this country, Either we're going to address the problems that happened with the election that millions of people are still concerned about. The Constitution says state legislatures set the rules for elections. That didn't happen in a few states. And so going forward, look, Joe Biden's the president. But does he towards what people are angry about?
But Congressman, I know Joe Biden's the president. He lives at the White House. I asked you, is he the legitimate president of the United States, and do you concede that this election was not stolen? Very simple question. Please just answer.
Look, once the electors are counted, yes, he's the legitimate president. But if you're going to ignore the fact that there were states that did not follow their own state legislatively set laws, that's the issue at heart that millions of people still are not happy with and don't want to see happen again. You know, look, you can rehash the election from 2020 all day long, but there are people concerned about what the next election is going to look like. Are we going to finally get back to the way the rule of law works? And I think that's the biggest frustration many people have is those states that didn't follow the law, are they going to keep doing that in the future? Or are we going to finally get back to what the Constitution calls out for electing our leaders?
All right, Congressman Steve Scalise, thank you for joining us on This Week.
So, like I said before I showed that clip and the previous clip, that is kind of the fight in the Republican Party, and Steve Scalise represents the vast majority of Republicans who aren't going to criticize Donald Trump for what happened January 6th, aren't going to say the election wasn't stolen, who grudgingly admit that Biden is president. One thing, you know, I watch all of these clips like 3 times, once when I watch the show, once when I'm capturing the clip, and then the third time when I watch it with you. And one thing that over time kind of dawned on me that both Asa Hutchinson and Steve Scalise did, despite their differences in point of view, they both praised Trump's family. And Trump's family may be the real Trump future in the Republican Party, more than Donald Trump himself running in 2024. I mean, that might happen. I think there's a significant chance he might be in jail by 2024, or maybe even out of jail by 2024. But I think he might have a criminal record. You know, there's nothing, if you have your Constitution, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that having a criminal record means he can't run for re-election, although if you look at the 14th Amendment, there's part of it that says if he were convicted of insurrection, and there are various ways Congress can vote to find him guilty of insurrection and make him ineligible to run. That's also a possibility. But both Asa Hutchinson and Steve Scalise did praise the Trump family, saying, you know, I think Asa Hutchinson said they love America. I don't know. I think they love themselves. I don't know if they, whatever. Maybe I'm too cynical to believe that the Trump family loves America, but I think the Trump family loves the Trump family, and that's my opinion just from the evidence I've witnessed over last years. But anyway, that was the last of the news clips. I did want to thank all of the Super Chat contributors, and, you know, I was saying earlier that if I upload the recorded version, none of the live comments will play next to the live stream like they usually do for recorded show viewers. But I can, here I want to make sure that it won't be lost to history if I show you a screenshot in the recorded show of all these Super Chat contributors here. Sorry, I had to make it really small to like fit them all into the screenshot. I don't know if you could read all those, but I definitely, I already thanked, oh, and it looks like it's happening again. I already thanked Tom Trask, Sinful Solutions, and Lulu Girl, and then Sana Hayes hung in there. Lulu Girl asked about the sardines for Dash and maybe jerky for Sandy, and Sandy's withering away to nothing. It's actually Dash I'm more worried about. You know, one of the things I haven't mentioned about Dash, I don't think, is Dash is like, the cat is like 16 years old, and I think he doesn't really look it, and he's generally has had a lot of energy, and jumps up on counters, and you've seen him in a lot of Dash and Sandy videos, but I'm starting to worry that he might be acting a little more subdued, and I'm not sure how much longer Dash the cat is going to be around, so maybe I got to record that sardine clip pretty soon. But I actually did get a bonus Dash and Sandy clip for you all that this morning shows how aggressive Dash the cat can be, the Dash and Sandy or Dandy clip, how aggressive Dash can be when wanting to get the food from Sandy the dog. You know, I've shown a lot of clips how I will, when I fill the dog's food bowl, the cat comes and takes one piece of dog food. I don't know why Dash the cat likes Sandy's dog food so much, but more and more Dash the cat has been like going right to the food bowl, and Sandy, our dog Sandy, is so sweet that she will not push the cat away. I actually, after this clip ends, I push the cat away so that the cat doesn't eat all the dog's dog food, which I will talk about with you a little more after we watch the Dash and Sandy clip together over here. So there you see Dash the cat eating the dog food right next to the dog. How brazen is that for a 16-year-old cat? Anyway, I am going to start the recorded version of the show uploading now. I suppose it's possible that the archive won't have all the sync errors or the audio sync problems, but most likely this live stream archive will stay unlisted, and I will upload the recorded version of the show as a premiere video so I can actually watch it with a whole new group of live viewers in a couple hours and hang out in the comment section, although I do have to eat dinner at some point. So anyway, we'll see how long it takes to upload it, but I will be back next Sunday and every Sunday for at least the next few months, at least until the end of this college semester, as I explained a few weeks ago. And so until next Sunday, or until I have some reason to upload some other kind of video, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.